Welcome back to Coffee with Danny and V, everybody. I'm V. This is Danny. Today we want to talk to you about baby steps to self-love. And we don't mean self-care. We mean baby steps to loving yourself, menopause symptoms and all. So what I hear from women most often is, my body's changing, my brain is changing, my moods are all over the place.
Yeah.
I just want to get back to being the me that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's maybe our first issue when it comes to loving ourselves right now, who we are in this moment.
Yeah.
Is if you're comparing yourself to how you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? That's a really negative headspace that you can get yourself in real darn fast.
I think even a shorter truncated timeline than even 10, 20 years ago. Like if you're thinking of yourself even 3, 4, 5 years ago, your body is going through a transition. You know, it's a big transition for your life and for the rest of your life and your health and everything. I mean, your body is going through this major transition. And I don't think that it's fair on ourselves to do to ourselves to compare ourselves to what we were before we started going through, because we're becoming something new. We're becoming something better.
Yes, exactly. I actually heard somebody say that it was like being in a chrysalis, right? Like a butterfly transition, because they felt like menopause after they hit that 12 months without a period was just the best time of their lives, and that they felt like if they could encourage women to think of perimenopause as being in a chrysalis to becoming who you truly are meant to be, that is a really great way to approach it. And I love that idea.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool.
I love it. We've talked often about this idea of rebranding, rewording menopause.
Yeah.
And I've got a few ideas, but with menopause, I think that we're very hard on ourselves. And even in our stuff, we say getting back to you, right?
Right.
Which we do want you to feel as normal. There's a lot of things that happen, mood swings, stuff like that, mental stuff, anxieties, different things that really just throw you off. And I think that getting back to you means getting back to feeling like you're not being controlled by menopause.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting back in control of your body and your moods and all.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that I've really taken to is our app name is Mental Life, because really it's not menopause, it's mental life. You're at the beginning of the rest of your life. I mean, it really is like this new adventure. Your body is going through this big transition. And this is the time, in my opinion, to like reinvent yourself, like to not even like completely reinvent yourself, but to take a look inward and to really figure out how to love yourself, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And who do you really want to be? Because, my daughter's older than yours, but I have to say, now that I'm no longer like responsible for being somebody's mommy every day, like, making sure the lunch got packed and the homework got done and soccer practice, we get to that and everything. Yes. You're like, oh yeah, I know.
I'm in the midst of it.
I am having so much fun discovering, okay, how do I want to spend my weekend? Because I don't have to drive kids to soccer practice and all of that, right? What do I want to do? And I've always wanted to be a sculptor. I've always wanted to paint. I've always wanted to do more with fabric art. And I finally have the time and the energy to do that, right? Yep. So I think for me, a lot of what's cool about menopause and learning to love myself is I get to go back to those ideas I had about who I would be and what I could be when I was in my 20s and my 30s, but was distracted by other things. Yeah. I finally get to start realizing some of those things, which goes a long way toward loving myself, because it's like I'm finally get to fulfill who I thought I was going to be.
Well, and I think too, you get to find that opportunity to fall in love with yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So, it is a period of falling in love, even as a period in which it's a period of discovery. And I think that you do that with yourself as you go through menopause. And I think sometimes it takes a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what we're talking about today is having that mindset to give yourself love, to love yourself, and to open those opportunities and those doors and that mindset to be able to do that inwardly. Because I think we get so caught up in menopause about the pain that we're in, because we're in a lot of pain from a lot of different angles. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's a physical roller coaster. And we need to give ourselves the possibility to love ourselves, and the way we can do that is really through our mindset and allowing that opportunity to happen.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up mindset, because I think one of the things that's really helpful for me specifically,
mm-hmm.
And I hope for you as well, are the affirmations that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we've got affirmations on the app, and I love them because I get to tell myself something nice every morning when I'm looking in the mirror, or I'm getting dressed, or I'm driving to work, or whatever it is. Just repeating like a positive mantra about what I'm going to do today, how I'm going to live in my body, and how I'm going to experience today is so helpful. And it just, so I've noticed since I started doing them that I get up in the morning and I'm like bouncing around when I get ready for work in the morning. And it's just a totally different way to begin your day.
Yeah. I think affirmations are an amazing thing, because you think of it as something silly. A little quote or whatever the case is, but really it's a reminder, right? And it's hard sometimes when we're stuck in the midst of the storm to come up with those reminders on our own, and to have a clear enough head to take a step back and do it for yourself. So, the fact that somebody can give you a quote or an affirmation, and you can take it and say, you know what, I'm going to apply that, and I'm going to think about that, and I'm going to reflect on it, right? So you're being able to reflect on what this is saying and what it means to you, because sometimes an affirmation can mean different things for different women.
Absolutely.
So, an affirmation about loving yourself even, and that term of loving yourself can mean something different for every woman, because every woman struggles with probably different ways in which they don't love themselves.
Right. Well, and the other thing I like about affirmations, just from a purely nerdy standpoint, is, you knew I was going to go there, is that when you are kind to yourself and you say something positive, right, it burns this tiny little neural pathway,
mm-hmm.
right? And the more you do that, and the more you feel positive about yourself, the deeper those pathways are in your brain. And you can kind of think of it as like, you can walk down this like path that has a little bit of grass growing over it,
mm-hmm.
right? And the more you walk down that path, the more deeply it gets cut into the soil, right? And that's what you want. You want to have positive neural pathways in your brain that affect the rest of your neural activity. So if you can give yourself an affirmation and say it over and over in the morning, and you can do that every morning or every other morning or whatever it is that works for you, the more you do that, the more ingrained those pathways become, and the more you're likely to love yourself. It's really a fascinating effect. We can absolutely affect change in our own brains just by burning those little neural pathways a little bit deeper every day. So keep that in mind when you're doing it, ladies. It means that you are getting your brain to a point where you don't have to work at loving yourself anymore, because you've done it so often and so regularly that it's just literally ingrained in your brain.
It reminds me of a couple other things that I've heard of like that through life is I've heard different things where they tell you to smile.
Yeah.
Smile for an extended period of time every day, and you'll be surprised at how much happier it actually makes you feel. And it's doing that same thing with your neural pathways. The other one is the yes versus no.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't believe that you should say yes to everything, but...
No, absolutely. There are times when no means no.
Right? But that concept of, no, the word no is a negative connotation. So if you're constantly no this, no that, I notice it with my kids. I notice it all the time with my kids. Know this, know that, know this, know that. And then I feel like I'm having this negative relationship. It's a negative interaction constantly because no has a negative connotation. Whereas if you change it to yes, and maybe it's a yes, but.
Or a yes, and.
And yes.
I love the yes, and.
But you're getting to yes, and that's a positive, right? So it's, again, that same kind of positive reinforcement, positive neural pathway. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about how you get to that. I think it's for women, especially for women who have had trauma in their background, abuse in their background, it is very difficult to get to a place of loving yourself because you've not heard the message that you should love yourself. You've not heard that you should be kind to yourself. You've probably heard over and over that you're not worthy of love or being kind to yourself or of kindness. And that's definitely something I struggled with, right? Danielle and I both have sort of fairly traumatic childhoods and traumatic backgrounds that we have worked diligently to overcome. And that I know that that's hard because, man, when I was in my early 20s and going through therapy to deal with some of the abuse that I had grown up with, that was not easy. And I remember my therapist really trying to get me to a point where I could just be comfortable in my own skin. And I have to say that I still have days when I struggle with that. But I think that the most important thing you can do if you've dealt with that and if you struggled with loving yourself because you heard negative messages in your past is to recognize that when people tell you negative things about yourself or about what you deserve, that what they're telling you is false information, right? That everyone deserves to be loved. Everyone. I hear from women a lot that they feel like they don't deserve the love of their partner, the love of their children. So if you don't love yourself first, you're going to have a really hard time accepting that someone else can love you. And that's why self-love is so important. So you've got to recognize that the people who were telling you these things were wrong.
Well, and I think too, even they were wrong, but they're also most of the time, if you can take a step back, when those things happen, they're self-reflecting on you, right? So the people that are saying these things, most often, they don't feel good about themselves, and therefore they have to project it to someone else and it makes them feel better by making someone else feel bad about themselves. And I think that if you can, it happens in a lot of instances. There's also traumatic, instances in people's lives that those traumatic instances make you feel unworthy a lot of times. And I really do think that self-love actually comes after self-acceptance. And self-acceptance really is taking a look at yourself and accepting yourself. It's so much more. It's like, yeah, my nails may be brittle, but it's okay. I'm still beautiful, right? I may be getting wrinkles, but I'm still beautiful. I may have, a belly, which I've got, but I'm still beautiful. And those are the outward things, right?
Right.
And I think it's those inner things, especially that stem from trauma that are harder. To overcome. But it really does come down to taking a step back and being able to really look at it from and accepting yourself first so that you can love yourself. That's one of the things that I had to do for myself, is I really had to look at everything, because I can say that I love myself, but I don't believe that you can actually say you love yourself if you don't accept yourself. And acceptance is truly like being able to look at one woman from the next and be able to understand the differences that all of us have. We are all different. We're made differently. We are not meant to be in a mold.
And that comes down to, I think there's more than just thinking of it as a physical thing too, right? Accepting who you are physically as a human body, but accepting who you are as like
a mother,
or even just your personality. Like struggled a lot with the fact that I am odd, weird, right? And you have to get to a point where you're all right with that, where you're all right with, other people's perceptions of what your oddities might be, and just embrace them and accept them, because life is too short, first of all.
Yes.
Right? Holy crap, is life going by like this?
Yeah.
It's too short. You've only got, if you're in your 40s or your 50s, chances are you're halfway done or more with your lifespan. Yeah. Life is too short.
Yeah. And I really think that inner is so important. And those, those character traits or those anything, it's not just that outward physical appearance stuff that you have to learn to accept. For me, it was, I am a very emotional being. I cannot watch someone cry and not cry myself. I can't do it. My kids we're watching movies, and the tearjerkers, they just get me. I literally cannot watch someone cry and not cry myself. And they're always like, looking over it on the couch, like, is she crying? I know she's about to cry, right? And it was also seen as a sign of weakness in a lot of different ways. My professional life, my personal life, the fact that I would cry so easily or did have very, wore my heart on my sleeve per se, was not seen as, being a strong woman, or a sign of independent or a sign of, being a leader. It was a sign of weakness, the fact that I would cry. And I had to get to that point where I accepted myself. I accepted it's okay that I cry. It's who I am. And I love that about me. I love that I can have that connection or feel that empathy with others, it does invoke tears.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of my favorite things about you. So, so let's talk a little bit about, so how do you wake up in the morning and you think, okay, today I'm going to love myself. Well, right? It just seems too nebulous. So what are some practical steps that women can take to learn to love themselves if they don't already, or to, appreciate themselves even more if they do already have a fairly healthy sense of self-love?
Mm-hmm. I know one of the things that, it to me goes in the line of affirmations is writing down something you're grateful for. It can be a really good just baby step, right? Mm-hmm. So it, again, starts training your mindset for that positive. What is it that I'm actually grateful for in my life, about me, those kinds of things, and actually making note of it. Whether in a journal, I have like a calendar that it has a little spot for that every week, and I fill it out every week so that I can remind myself that it's not all bad. And I think if we can get past that mindset too, that it's not all bad, then we can open the doors for the acceptance and the self-love too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then telling yourself something positive about you every day. So I love the idea of, you've got your gratitude journal and you write down what you're grateful for, but also write down something that you did or said or were or felt that you loved about your ability to embrace that experience. I like to do that in my journal. So I've got, have this little remarkable thing so that it's digital and I can always look back and upload it to the cloud and all that stuff. It's so cool. Not sponsored. But I just keep like a little thing of a running thing of, okay, I loved this about myself today. And it does help. It makes me feel better about my ability to live in this body, in this experience, in this time. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it out to the outward, I think a lot of women, we have the inward, and I think these kinds of things, the affirmations, the making note of things that you love about yourself really helps towards that finding that inner love and opening that mindset to it. And it's hard because I think us women, we're so pressured about that outer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think that's something we have coming up too, is talking about that outward appearance. But even for me, and I know that it's still learning to accept myself, but it might even be something as simple as finding a couple outfits that you feel good in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can help that mindset. It can help you feel good about yourself. And yeah, you think, oh, well, that's vain, or, anything like that. But it's not necessarily vain. And it's not vain if it makes you feel good about you, right?
Right.
Who the fuck cares about what anybody else thinks except you? And if you feel good, ladies, it can be your bathrobe and slippers, if that's what makes you feel good, right? You can be like, I feel good in this silk robe, or whatever it is, But if you can find a few things that just help you feel good, even outwardly, I think that goes a long ways for opening that mindset to feeling good about yourself and loving yourself.
And activities that you feel good about, right?
Yeah.
Make you feel good. I love to dance, right? I started my career as a dancer in my 20s. I wasn't very good at it, but I love it. And it's something that, I don't do in public anymore, right? I just dance around my kitchen or whatever the case may be. But it's an activity that reminds me that I love the way my body moves, and that I love that I can do that. And it releases dopamine. So, exercise activity releases dopamine, and dopamine means, you feel a little bit more positive throughout the day. So yeah, finding an activity, and it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go run a marathon.
No,
it can be dancing around your kitchen.
It can be dancing around your kitchen. It can be taking your dog for a walk.
Yeah.
It could be playing tennis with a girlfriend. It could be a game of bunco, honestly. And that brings in like the community part of things, right? So a lot of times you can get that kind of step with that community piece with other women, and those activities really help with that self-love too.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things that we think you can do: tell yourself you love yourself, engage in affirmations, do some physical activity, wear what you love, do what you love, and remind yourself why you love those things about you. And those are some small things you can start to do today to make sure that you're the best version of yourself and that you love who you're becoming. Because menopause is not the end of your life. There is a whole lot of life left to live. We will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.